Hiya, Brian Houston here. I wanted to talk to you about opportunities, and it comes in the form of a story. So hopefully it won't be too long. Bear with me. So many years ago, I had played a gig in Liverpool one night, and I'd been well paid for the gig. And I was flying back to Belfast that morning. Before I left Liverpool, I'd got a text from an artist I was meant to meet later that day to go on a tour of Scotland, and the text said they wanted me to help them hire a car. Now I wasn't getting. I was going. So the plan was fly back to Belfast, pack my case, and fly back to Scotland that afternoon to start this tour. And I wasn't being paid for the tour. All I would make on the tour was what I would sell in CDs. And so it was already challenging to go on that tour. And now that someone was adding an expense to it, I was feeling, oh my goodness, that's definitely off-putting. Plus, I was third on the bill, so I would probably be playing to rooms that didn't have a lot of people. And I had a cold. And I'd just been paid well for the night before. So there was a lot of reason to just say, oh, well, look, thanks very much for the offer, but I'm going to stay home. I remember standing in the hallway of my home in Belfast with my wife, and I said to her, should I just contact them and say I'm not well, I won't go? And she said, look, why don't you just go, play the first gig or two, see how you feel. If it's not going well, book a flight and come home. It won't be a problem. So I took her advice and I flew to Scotland. And when I landed there, the girl who'd asked me to hire the car picked me up from the airport very kindly and told me a friend had offered to drive us to the next town, which was Berwick-on-Tweed in England. So we were driving from Edinburgh to Berwick-on-Tweed, and we didn't have to pay for a car. So already one of the first obstacles had disappeared. And I played the show that night, and there was a journalist there who thought what I did was great. And I found out later he wrote a great article about my performance. And then as that tour progressed, I was working with two American artists, and as I watched them and I watched their set and I watched how they delivered their performance, I learned so much about songwriting, and I learned so much about how to perform, because a lot of my early performances, I felt I could win people over with passion and energy. And what I was watching with these American artists was more refined, more complex. They had nice, funny, entertaining anecdotes between songs, and they had a whole relaxed nature to their performance that I hadn't experienced before. And plus, on that tour, the habit of a lot of English sound engineers was to offer for £10, they would offer to record your set. And then at the end of the night, you give them a tenner and they give you a CD. And so as you drove around on the tour, you could listen to the previous night's performance, which was the first time I had ever done that. And boy, was it an eye-opener, because I was not impressed when I heard myself. And I couldn't believe that I was actually getting compliments from the audience, because when it was recorded, it just sounded very, really messy and unpleasant. And so I was learning all kinds of lessons on that tour. But one of the biggest ones was there was an agent who had booked a previous tour for me of a similar nature, and I'd never met him before. And on this tour, I had to go and meet him to do him a favour to take some CDs for one of these artists. And I met him in a little lay-by in England, and he gave me the CDs. He asked me did I have any of my CDs that he might listen to, and I gave him my CD Mea Culpa, produced by Paul Wilkinson. And a few weeks later, he ended up giving that CD to Bob Harris of Old Grey Whistle Test, who's famous for many, many reasons, including interviewing post-Beatles, all four Beatles, and recently Ringo Starr. So Bob is a tastemaker and a real influencer within the UK music scene. And this agent gave this CD to Bob, who then had a national radio show, a couple of national radio shows, which he still has. And he ended up playing my CD on one of his national radio shows. And that was the first time I'd ever got national airplay. And what that led to, through the agent called JJ, Jonathan Johnson, who I'm very grateful for, and through him and through Bob Harris, I ended up doing lots of events with Bob and flying over to England many times to play shows, and developed a relationship with Bob and ended up becoming friends, and which led to him inviting me to sing at his birthday party. This happened over the period of about 2 to 3 years. And at his birthday party, and I was playing there, and there was 5 or 6 acts who were playing. It cost me a lot of money to go to that birthday party. I had to fly, I had to pay for hotel, I had to pay for car hire, I had to pay for all kinds of things. And standing at the end of that gig, they invited all the musicians to get up and play, but it was a tiny little stage and everyone had guitars, including me, except I had a little harmonica. And when I seen everyone getting up with guitars, I realized there wasn't room for us all and you wouldn't hear us all. So I just grabbed my harmonica and my little harmonica mic, and I just stood there and tried to find the key that everyone was jamming in and play along. And then there reached a point where two guys, got up out of the crowd and all the band sat down apart from the bass player and the drummer. And this guy with big long blonde hair and another guy with a 1961 Fender Telecaster, beautiful instrument, they began to play blues songs. And at one point turned around and pointed at me for a solo, which is hilarious because I come from the Bob Dylan school of suck, blow, 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 suck, blow, right? There's no such thing as blues harmonica in my repertoire. So when he pointed to me for a harmonica solo, it sounded like you were choking a cat or something, and the cat was like on the brink of expiring. It was not a pretty sound. And needless to say, he never gave me another solo the rest of that night, which I didn't mind, because this guy turned out to be Robert Plant and the guitar player was Bernie Marsden from Whitesnake. And at the angle I was standing, there was all these photographs taken, and I ended up in all these photographs with Robert Plant and having played with Robert Plant. And so the moral of this story is that from standing in a hallway in Belfast with a cold and 5 or 6 good reasons not to do something, I ended up playing on stage with Robert Plant, getting national radio airplay, becoming friends with a couple of beautiful people who I'm friends with to this day, and gaining a huge insight into my development as an artist. And the point of the story is that opportunities come before money. And often, if we make money the deal breaker, then the opportunity disappears to someone else. Opportunities never go away, they just go to someone else. In that particular case, thanks to the advice from my wife, that one critical decision became a domino that birthed many, many good things in my life. And so if you offered an opportunity, and especially if you've got many reasons to say no, but you're being a faithful person, you're sticking to your word, you're doing what you said you would do, and you're not letting people down. In other words, you're behaving as a person of honour, and you take that opportunity. You should grasp it with both hands, for you never know where that's going to lead and what you might benefit from someday. That's the lesson for today. Thanks for listening.